Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Core studio. Welcome to the show. Alright, so finally it is revealed. One of the cards I have been waiting to see ever since not teaser season, but Morrow's teasers. There we go. It wasn't really a season, it was like a day of it, essentially. But I've been waiting for this one, and it does not disappoint. It is, well, an interesting build around. Let's jump into it though. First, starting off with something that we did not get teased, and it looks like an amusement park for some reason, but yeah, it's the Recursion Monument. But there are going to be some very happy mill players out there. An artifact for a 1 and a blue. Pay 1, tap any number of target players, each mill 2 cards. So that's nice, just being able to force mill on players, and you can choose, again, any number of players. So if you are a self-mill strategy, you can obviously pick yourself. You have any kind of benefits with that. Or otherwise, again, if you're just trying to mill your opponents out, cool, yeah, do that. That being said, though, the big part of this is exhaust. Pay 2 blue, tap any number of players, target players, I should say, each mill cards equal to the number of cards in their graveyard. So doubling that up, which is huge. Now, we have seen that effect on an artifact that I believe costs 5 or 6 or so, and I think Keening Stone, is that the one? And then it doubles up 1 players, but essentially this one, again, it's any number. That being said, it is only 1-time activation, unless you can, recur this, bring it back out of the graveyard, back to your hand, replay it, or, yeah, just blink it in some kind of a way. That being said, a big bursty effect like this one is massive. In self-mill strategies, will love it, obviously, because, yeah, you can mill yourself and mill yourself a ton, but also, of course, milling other player strategies, milling other players out can be absolutely huge for this, too. So, yeah, a really cool card. Moving on, though, Dune Drifter, 3/3 vehicle for X, white and a black. It's got crew 2. When it enters, return target artifact or creature card mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So, an interesting recursion vehicle in a way. It's pretty cool. Again, like being able to bring back an artifact or a creature, so it could be, a vehicle, could be just a regular artifact, or could be a creature. It's an interesting card for sure. Yeah, vehicle decks can definitely consider it for a great, recursion, while also still being a vehicle itself. It's also pretty flexible that, like, if you don't need to, do that, or if you don't have anything to target and you need to get something out, you can just pay 2 mana for this, essentially, to get it out. So it's still, like, not all that great, but an interesting option to have. Reanimation strategies, do they actually really want this? Maybe. I mean, again, there's definitely better reanimation spells out there. Yeah, it's an interesting card for sure. I'm sure there's some weird combos with, like, Ornithopter and stuff, though, because it is on an ETB, not on a cast. And, yeah, if you just, like, were able to sacrifice that, bring that back, there's some weird things I'm sure you can do with it. Regardless, vehicles, moving on. We've got Gestalt Raider, a 2/1 Vampire Rogue. Start your engines for 3 mana in black. When this creature enters, target opponent reveals their hand. If you choose an instant or source card from it, that player has to discard that card. Max speed, ++1 and gains menace. Yeah, probably more so a limited card. I mean, it could see play, I guess, potentially in, like, discard strategies, but there's definitely better ways to force discard than this. So, yeah, mostly probably a limited card. Or if a deck just needs to shove every single Start Your Engines card in a deck, then maybe that. And we'll talk about that kind of a, well, commander maybe later. A little preview. Okay, anyways, moving on. Ooze Racer, a 2/2 ooze for 4 mana in green. When this creature enters, mill 2 cards and put a counter on this creature for each card in your graveyard that's an artifact or creature. Yeah, I mean, this could be a kind of self-mill strategy card that's like, oh, okay, cool, like a little bit of mill, essentially, with it on ETB, which is nice. But, of course, it could be a giant threat for you as well. Also, its wheels are hands and arms. Weird. But, yeah, it is definitely a card that, when it enters, could do something pretty big. That being said, yeah, it's more specific, for those self-mill strategies mostly, I would say. Moving on. Racer's Scoreboard. That is a weird thing to have as an artifact, but I guess it is. Okay, here we go. Artifact for 4. Start your engines. Enters, draw 2 cards, discard a card. Max speed, spells you cast, costs 1 less to cast. An interesting card for sure. A blink strategy could definitely consider it because, yeah, I mean, draw 2, discard 1. You're still going up in 1 in card advantage. You can also get rid of dead cards in your hand. Yeah, I mean, maybe artifact strategies, maybe. It is, again, one of those things where, yeah, like, making your spells cost 1 to cast, and again, all your spells, that's massive, that's huge. That can help out a lot of decks out there. But again, it does take a while to get there, the Start Your Engines kind of thing. Like, unless you have a bunch of other Start Your Engines cards in your deck, you're probably going to have to wait to get this out and then wait like 3 more turns essentially if you can even get, damage through or life loss on that first turn. So yeah, it's going to take some time to actually get to that max speed. And the payoff for 4 mana isn't just quite there. Again, unless you've got ways to use and abuse it, then yeah, maybe if you can use and abuse it. But outside of that, or like a search your engine strategy, maybe pass on it. Next up, though, Thundering Brood Wagon, a 6/5 vehicle with menace and reach. We've already seen the art in this one. It's pretty sweet. For 6 mana in total in Golgari. When it enters story target, non-land permanent opponent controls with mana value 4 or less, crew 3, and cycle it for 2. Okay, so a lot going on with this one. Again, a pretty beefy body. Again, 6/5 menace reach. Does cost 6, though, obviously. Crew 3, that's probably like the medium range of like, okay, that's a decent amount to crew. That being said, the ETB is quite nice. Destroy any non-land permanent opponent controls with mana value 4 or less. That's like not quite Meteor Golem, obviously, because Meteor Golem's anything, but it is kind of like a more intimidating presence. Again, being a 6/5 menace reach, even if it's not always a creature, which can be a good thing again because it can dodge board wipes. That being said, the cycling is quite nice because it gives you that flexibility that if you don't need it as a vehicle, if you don't need that ETB, get rid of it, get something else. So yeah, cycling decks can obviously consider this one. Cycle 2 is amazing. Keep printing that Wizards because I want my fluctuator deck to become a thing where it's just like, oh, all the fluctuating things, there's 0 for cycling. Yay! No? Okay. But yeah, ETB decks can use and abuse this as well. Outside of that and vehicle decks, yeah, it's not quite like, Meteor Golem, levels because like Meteor Golem just can fit in any deck. But yeah, it's definitely something to consider. Absolutely. Next up, we've got Veteran Beast Rider, a 3/4 human knight for 3 mana in Selesnya. At the beginning of your end step, untap each creature you control. You can stop right there, and it's probably going to see play because, well, there are certain types of strategies out there that like to get creatures out, maybe tap them for abilities, and yeah, that includes Mana Orcs as well, and then you can untap them. So yeah, if you're like me and you've got a deck that just has like, hey, every single activated ability you can possibly utilize that taps a creature. Awesome. Utilize those. Yay! And then you can untap them and do it again and again and again. Or if you have a commander that essentially utilizes an untap ability, that can be great as well. Obviously, a free untap effect for that, like, my Garth deck, essentially. But also, I forgot to read the rest of it. Pay 4 mana in Selesnya in total. Creatures you control get +1 until end of turn. Yeah, that's nice. I mean, it can be, like, a decent, like, in combat, like, threat to, like, pump your creatures, pump your army, or a decent finisher once you get enough mana. But overall, yeah, I'd say most of this is just for like the, hey, untap your creatures. It's kind of like a wilderness reclamation for your creatures, which is quite nice. And there are certain decks out there that really, really want that. Next up, though, Voyage Home. That way. That's home. It's just pointing, see? Okay, anyway, sorcery for 7 mana in total, but you're never going to pay that in Azorius. Affinity for artifacts, you draw 3 cards and gain 3 life. Again, with Affinity for artifacts, if you're playing an artifact strategy, you can probably get this all the way down to, well, just 2 mana. And because of that, that's 2 mana, draw 3, gain 3. Yeah, I can see this one, even though it is sorcery speed, it is not instant speed. I can see artifact strategies out there that can consistently get a lot of artifacts out. Wanting to utilize this is a pretty solid draw spell. Again, 2 mana to draw 3 and gain 3. Nice. The gain 3, like, you can either take it or leave it, but, like, draw 3 for 2 mana, yeah, sign me up for that. Even again, if it's sorcery speed, if you can consistently get a good amount of artifacts in play, again, if you have, again, an artifact strategy, a clue strategy, a treasure strategy, and you're in these colors, you might want to consider it. Again, like, test it out. Again, sorcery speed does throw a little bit of a hitch into it, but this might just be good enough that you're going to consider it. Because, yeah, it's just 2 mana, draw 3, gain 3. There you go. Next up, though, Riptide Gearhulk Wizards. Why did you do this? Why? A 2/5 construct with double strike and prowess for 5 mana in Azorius. Now, if we just stop there, it would be fine, but here we go. When this creature enters, for each opponent, put up to 1 target non-land permanent that player controls into its owner's library, 3rd from the top. Now, I usually, Wizards am somewhat, against you adding too many restrictions to something like activate only once each turn, or only at sorcery speed, or in this case, what it should have potentially said is when you cast it and it enters, enters if you cast it, that kind of phrasing. Because this is way too easy to use and abuse in Blink decks, and this is literally the colors of Blink decks. This is a, what do you call it? Like, not mind lock. What's the, whatever it is where you're just like, just locking a player out of the game by essentially just putting a card on top of their library again and again and again and again and again and again. Yeah, that's basically what you're going to be doing with this. And, putting it on top, no, it's 3rd from the top. But again, in a Blink deck where you can blink this an absurd amount of times, so many times, you're like, okay, again, for each opponent, not just 1, 3 opponents, it's 3 things you're bouncing every single time they see ETBs. You bounce 3 things, but you're not bouncing them back to the hand. No. You're putting them third from the top, which means that you are stacking that player's deck with what they're going to be drawing eventually. And then you do it again, and then again, and then again. And all of a sudden, you are taking away your opponent's permanents, non-land permanents, I should say, and then sticking them into their library. And sure, those next 2 cards that they're going to be drawing aren't any of the cards that you're blinking into their deck, but the next 5, 6, 7, however many times you blink this essentially are going to be. So they're just going to get stuck with the exact same cards over and over and over again. If they don't have any responses to this with what they already have in their hand, they're stuck. They are stuck. This is just a blink lock strategy card that, yeah, it's going to be hard to argue against not utilizing it in a blink deck. Yes, I know that, it has 2 pips of white, 2 pips of blue, which I'm glad they actually made this a slightly restrictive casting cost, but yeah, I mean, most blink decks are either just Azorius colors or maybe Azorius colors plus a 3rd color, like a Tulane deck, essentially. And not Tulane's not really a blink, I guess, but, you can. Okay, anyways. Being able to just utilize, this in a multitude of blink decks, which are usually 3 or less colors, yeah, you're going to want to. It is a crazy good removal spell / finisher for you because it is just, again, great removal. 5 mana, get rid of 3 things. Temporarily, sure, but also kind of in a permanent way as well, because you're just removing your opponent from the game because they cannot draw into anything they actually need because they keep drawing the exact same things again and again and again and again. So unless they've got a way to literally dig down into their deck a ton, or a way to shuffle their library that they have to have either in their hand or on the board, they're in trouble because they are losing their things and they are then getting them back, but they probably don't want those things back. They want other things. Wizards! Goodness gracious, it just seems like the other Gearhawks are pretty mild, and you're like, no, this one, just go for it, why not? And then also on top of that, again, doesn't even need double strike prowess, but it has that too, so it can be a finisher for you as well, and a pretty heavy hitter as well, and it's pretty hard to swing into, again, because that prowess and that double strike. Yeah, there's a lot going on here, Wizards. What in the world? Okay, moving on, though. We've got Detention Chariot, a 6/6 vehicle for 6 mana in white. Crew 3, cycle away for a single white mana. Enters, exile target artifact creature opponent controls until this vehicle leaves the battlefield. Wizards, please stop putting an opponent controls on things. Again, I literally just complained that they did the opposite, where they didn't restrict things. Now they're over-restricting things with this one, though. Come on, let the Fiend Hunter type, decks work where you're just blinking your own things again, infinitely for fun. Okay, that being said, yeah, I mean, cycling again makes it so that it is at least flexible enough that if you need to get rid of it, you can. A vehicle deck, obviously consider this one, like a 6/6 crew 3. That's not all that bad, but it's 6 mana, so that's pretty high up there. But that being said, again, a temporary removal spell is quite nice with that. Yeah, it's probably more of a limited card, but again, if you had a cycle strategy as well, definitely anything that has like cycling for just a single mana will be considered when it comes to like, oh, do I want that? Do I want that? Yeah, maybe. Okay. Next up, we've got Loxodon Surveyor, a 3/3 Elephant Scout for 3 mana in green. Start your engines, max speed, pay 3, exile this card from your graveyard, draw a card. I mean, it's nice that it's like, okay, you can start your engines and, get that going for certain decks out there that might want that, like Samut, I talked about a couple episodes ago. Yeah, that's nice, but like the big payoff of this one is like, okay, it's a 3/3 for 3. All right. It's in your graveyard, though. Eventually, you can pay 3 mana once you get your max speed up to draw a single card. Okay, yeah, probably more of a limited card. Next up, Gastal Blockbuster, a 3/2 Human Berserker for 3 mana in red. When this creature enters, you may sacrifice a creature or vehicle. When you do, store target artifact opponent controls. Probably more so a limited card. I mean, maybe like a weird risk, not a weird risk card style strategy, but a risk card style strategy, I guess. We're like, I'd really like to make sure that I can destroy an artifact when I want to by sacrificing something that I actually want to sacrifice. So sure, but yeah, most of the time it's probably just a limited card. Next up, though, really cool art, though. Next up, Pride of the Road. Not sure why this is a bit blurry. My apologies for that. A 2/5 Zombie Cat Warrior with Vigilance for 4 mana in white. Start your engines. Max speed at the beginning of combat on your turn. Target creature or vehicle you control gains double strike until end of turn. Yeah, again, probably more of a limited card. Yeah, it's only a 2/5 with Vigilance for 4 mana most of the time. And then eventually you get like, okay, cool, double strike to something. Awesome. But like one thing, there's better ways to give double strike out there to like your entire team or yeah, consistently every single turn without having to get that max speed. Next up though, we've got Diversion Unit, a 2/1 robot with flying for 2 mana in blue. Pay a single blue mana, sacrifice this creature to counter target and source spells. Controller pays 3. I mean, not bad, again, for like a flying deck, essentially. One, like a flying men type strategy, like slow the ground type creatures, or just literally like flying tribal deck, essentially. That could be pretty good. Again, a 2/1 flyer for 2 mana, that's not bad. Again, you're mostly just utilizing it in combat to get through on opponents for damage, and also whatever triggers you might have for commanders, like one we talked about earlier in spoiler season. That being said, also, it kind of like is that Siren, is it Siren Storm Tamer? Is that the name of that one, though? Where it's like, okay, like I can sacrifice it to protect something. And this, you can like always just have this in play to be like, oh, opponents, I'd be careful when you're casting instant sorceries. Because if you're doing anything negative against me, or if you're casting some kind of a game-ending thing, I'm going to counter it unless you pay 3 extra. So either they have to try to hold up that extra 3 mana to ensure that you can't do that, or again, they're going to utilize their effects against other players instead of you because they don't want just countered. So it's a nice thing to just have in play as a deterrent. So it's a pretty good card, actually. Moving on, though, we've got Scrap Compactor, an artifact for a single mana. Pay 3 tap, sacrifice artifact, 3 damage target creature. Pay 6 tap, sacrifice, destroy target creature or vehicle. Seems very expensive for doing all those things. Maybe like in a low-to-the-ground artifact strategy that just wants to get things in play and then eventually just maybe utilize them, later if they need to with the mana. Like just, okay, get a bunch of artifacts in play and they get this effect, or, it helps me with this. Maybe, but outside of that, it's probably more of a limited card. Next up, though, here we go. The Speed Demon. Okay, so I was waiting for this one ever since spoiler season started. Before that, we had the what do you call it? The teasers, Morrow's teasers, and Morrow had the, hey, look, this creature named Speed Demon. It's like, that thing better be legendary because it's the Speed Demon. All right, here we go. A 5/5 ledge creature demon for 5 mana. Flample, of course, flying trample. Start your engines. So another start your engines commander. And this one says, beginning of your end step, you draw X cards and lose X life, for X is your speed. So this one, like Samut, actually gives you a benefit that is not just like you have to be at max speed. No, it gives you a benefit no matter what your speed is. So once you get this in play again, you automatically go to 1, but also again, it increases once on each of your turns when opponent loses life. So essentially again, if on that same turn you're making someone lose life, I believe you'd go to 2, right? And max speed is 4, so within 3 more turns or whatever, you are getting to 4. And that is draw 4, lose 4. And again, when it comes to like losing life and drawing cards, that's something you're easily able to do in Commander, right? You're like, oh, okay, cool, yeah. I've got 40 life. I've got plenty to lose. That's fine. I'll lose whatever. I'll just draw the cards. 1 life for 1 card is easily worth it. And drawing 4 cards on your end step can be absolutely massive. Keep in mind, it is end step, so like you're probably going to discard down to hand size, but you're not going to be complaining when you've got an absurd amount of cards to pick from. So a commander that is a 5/5 Flampler, which again can actually help you get through to start, keep getting that max speed up, or that speed up to get to max speed, I should say, on those turns when it can attack. Great. That being said, yeah, I mean, what it's really just is a giant draw engine for you. That is also a decent threat as well. So yeah, there's some exciting things you can do with it. And of course, I'm going to be jumping into some cards that you're going to consider if you want to build around the Speed Demon. Now, first up, and I'm sure there's some argument on directions that you can go with this commander. Sure, you can go with all the Start Your Engines cards, absolutely. I am not going to recommend that necessarily because there's some pretty bad ones for the most part that are like just not all that great, and you just shouldn't have... It's kind of like a parasitic mechanic where it's like, all right, I need to keep using more and more of these cards, even though some of them are pretty worthless, to actually make this work, to get my speed up quick. Because like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I guess the dream would be, right, oh my goodness, I got my max speed of 4, and my commander just came into play, and now all of a sudden I'm already at like, full throttle with it. I get, the 4 cards, 4 life loss. That's nice. I don't know if I'd go far into like, okay, literally every single card that says start your engines, but I'd utilize the ones that make sense. Like Amonkhet Raceway most definitely makes sense. It's a very simple land. It says start your engine, so that gets your max speed thing going. Tap for a colorless, max speed, tap target creature gain taste off turn. That max speed part is nice as well. You don't need to just include this in the deck though, because it gives you that max speed part. Like that max speed part's very lovely, and giving your commander haste would be nice. Swing guy, go for it, okay? That being said, the reason why this would be in the deck is literally just, it's a land, it doesn't take up any space in the deck, you're in a monocolor deck, and yeah, it doesn't need to, you don't need to have every land fix your mana. So essentially with this, it's like, oh, okay, cool, like, it just, enters, it makes me start my engines, and all of a sudden now, if I start making my opponents lose life, I gain that speed before my commander even gets out. So yeah, whatever like any of the like lands are, essentially that, tap for colorless and say start your engines, you probably just want to chuck in this deck, essentially, because they're probably going to give you a good amount of value with this commander. But yeah, I would be a bit more careful about other Start Your Engines cards. I would utilize some that make sense, but I wouldn't just be like, oh, every single card on Scryfall that says Start Your Engines and is in mono black, shove them all in this deck. I wouldn't do that. Next up, Leech-Ridden Swamp. A swamp that enters tapped, and it has pay a black tap. Each opponent loses 1 life. Active if you control 2 or more black permanents. Again, a land that can help you out in a different way. A land that can help you gain speed once you have started your engines. Very simply, very effectively. Yeah, if you got 2 more black permanents in play, which you're going to, then all of a sudden there's just a land that can help you make opponents lose life to gain speed, so that can be absolutely huge. Speaking of yet another land, Reliquary Tower. Yeah, pretty obvious with this one here. You have a maximum hand size, tap for a colorless, Yeah, having the maximum hand size again with a commander that lets you draw up to 4 cards on your end step, that can be absolutely massive. So you're going to want to have the maximum hand size so that you can just hold on to those cards. Not that it's like the end of the world if you don't have that, but it is quite nice with a commander, especially like this one, that gives you a lot of benefit. But again, that benefit's at the end of the turn, so to just capitalize on everything, yeah, just hold on to all the cards. And to make your turn take probably forever because you're like, hold on, I want to see if I have a response in my 40-card hand. Yeah, don't take all that long, everyone, okay? Sunscorched Desert, again, just a very simple effect. It's like, okay, like, why not? It's a land desert, enters 1 damage to target player, tap, add colors to your mana pool. Very simple, very effective. Like, I mean, within a reasonable amount, still keep, a decent amount of basics in the deck, obviously, or, enough effects that, come and play on tap and tap for a black, because you do need black mana too. That being said, yeah, just a simple, like, okay, I play this land, it pings you for 1, I had my engine started already, so now I go up 1 speed just by playing a land and doing nothing else. That's quite nice. Next up, though, Basilica Screecher. This helps out in multiple ways, actually. A 1/2 bat with flying for 2 mana. Again, low to the ground creatures that are evasive. That is not a guarantee, but nearly a guarantee that you're going to be able to increase your speed once you've started your engines, essentially, because you can get through probably on at least one opponent that doesn't have a flyer to block this. That being said, obviously, it having Extort helps as well. And for any newer players out there that's confused as to why this has an Orzhov symbol on it, yes, you can utilize it in a mono black deck because it's in reminder text, okay? So that's kind of confusing with Extort, but that's just how it is. Whenever you cast a spell, you may pay a black mana, most likely, because you're in a mono black deck. If you do, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain that much life. So again, the fact that you gain life is quite nice to mitigate all that life loss. So yeah, Extort can be great for this because your commander's going to have you lose a decent amount of life, and that's okay. But also, again, it is just oh, okay, I cast any spell, I pay 1 more mana, and all of a sudden, I ensure that I go up some speed. Fantastic for me. Imperial Plate. Speaking of taking advantage of, well, the speed in the hand that you're going to be having, equipment for 2 mana. Equip creature gets +1 for each card in your hand, equip 2. I mean, not that you're guaranteed to have 7 cards in your hand with this commander, but like once you're set up, yeah, you kind of are, because you're just going to keep drawing so many cards. So yeah, keep drawing those cards. If you got maximum hand size, even more of that, of course. But yeah, being able to go to a 12/12 with your commander with that +7/+7, that's huge. Your commander turns into a 2-shot KO, and again, it has Flample, so you can take players out quite quickly. And obviously, if you've got a double strike component to that too, cool. A 1-shot KO, or literally just if you have no maximum hand size and you're drawing so many cards, maybe even a 1-shot KO just with this. Next up, Keen Duelists. Again, the cards that actually give you a benefit while also giving you a way to increase your speed just consistently are huge. A 2/2 Human Wizard for 2 mana. Beginning of your upkeep, you and target opponent each reveal the top card of your library. You each lose life if you let mana value of the card revealed by the other player. You put that card revealed in your hand. Basically, yeah, kind of like a weird Bob in a way, Dark Confident, but one that, again, does essentially, not always, but nearly guarantees that opponent is going to lose life. I guess if they hit, a land, or you hit a land, I should say, it's not going to have them lose life, but still. It is fine. You just have a lot of these different effects, and you're bound to have players lose life. And on top of that, of course, it's a good card engine for you. Next up, of course, any kind of a Blood Artist or Zulaport Cutthroat type effect can be helpful with this too. 1/1 Human Rogue Ally for 2 mana in black. Whenever another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Being able to drain your opponents just by creatures dying is nice. So all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, cool. I swing. All right, if you don't block, great. You lose life, and then my speed increases. If you do block and take out my creature, great. You also lose life. So it's kind of like a no-win scenario for them. IR for Select Dwayne, another card that helps out in multiple ways. 2/3 Elf Noble for 3 mana. Whenever it or another black creature in the battlefield control, each opponent loses life, you gain 1 life, tap, sacrifice another black creature, draw a card. So this is a draw engine for you, which is quite nice, but also, of course, just, hey, okay, again, a way to ensure that you are getting life lost for your opponents, which can be huge. Bondu's Monument, again, helps out in multiple ways. Black creature spells cost 1 less to cast. This is $7. Wizards reprint it. What are you doing? My gosh. Whenever you cast a creature spell, each spell loses life and you gain 1 life. So yeah, being able to reduce the cost of your spells, that's huge, obviously, but on top of that, of course, just cast any spell and drain opponents. Cryptolith Fragment, again, yet another way to just very simply, very effectively say, hey, you know what, let's just drain opponents with a slightly inefficient mana rock. An artifact for 3 that comes into play tapped, only taps for 1 mana of any color, but it says each player loses 1 life. This punishes you as well, but we'll talk about why that might not be a bad thing later with some kind of a strategy you can utilize. That being said, again, just tapping your mana rock ensures that everyone loses life and can increase your speed. That can be huge. Marauding Blight Priest, a 3/2 Vampire Cleric for 3 mana. Whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1 life. If you've got a big kind of gain life component to this deck, definitely consider these as well. They can be great finishers for you too. There's a couple different variations of this essentially. But yeah, also a way to say, oh yeah, I'm utilizing my life gain effect to mitigate all my giant life loss that I have. That being said, now everyone else loses life, and I gain some speed too. So I can lose even more life and draw more cards. Retreat to Hagra. Simple, effective. Whenever a land is battlefield under control, choose one. You have a creature +1/+0 and death touch. Sure, that's nice. Especially with your commander, again, that has flying and trample. With trample, yeah, you can just... Okay, death touch. Oh, you blocked with one flyer? Cool, I assigned 1 damage to that and the rest to your face. Yay! Then, on top of that, though, and more importantly, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life is the other option. So literally just playing a land, any land, will make sure that you are going to be draining your opponents, and all of a sudden, again, going up in speed. Shield of the Apocalypse, incredibly expensive card. My gosh. 4/5 for X Imperative Death Touch for 4 mana in black. Whenever you draw a card, you gain 2 life. Opponent draws a card, they lose 2 life. This one not only makes it so that you are mitigating your life loss, but you are actually gaining life. Again, your commander is going to have you, once you're at max speed, lose 4 life, draw 4 cards. Now all of a sudden you're going to be gaining 4 life and drawing 4 cards, basically, because you lose 4 but gain 8. So yeah, this can be quite huge. On top of punishing your opponents, and of course, I guess if you have any ways to make opponents draw cards on your turn, you can also gain speed with that too. Twilight Prophet, another great card. It's only 73 cents, and I remember this used to be like 10 bucks or so. 2 for Flying Vampire Cleric with Ascend for 4 mana. Again, get the City's Blessing once you've got 10 more permanents. Beginning of your upkeep, you get the City's Blessing. Remove the top card of your library, put it in your hand. Each opponent loses X life. You gain X life for X that card's mana value. Again, unless you're hitting lands, you're going to be draining your opponents as well. Alhamret's Archive, a very good card. Ledger Artifact for 5 mana. If you gain life, gain twice that much life instead. Again, helps mitigate all that life loss you're going to be having when you've got life gain synergies with this. More importantly, though, if you draw a card, except the first you draw in each of your draw steps, draw 2 cards instead. So again, literally at the high end of that max speed, draw 8 cards. Lovely. Soul Conduit, finally. Yeah, you can also go with this kind of a strategy. Instead of it being like, okay, I'm going to have a bunch of life gain effects. No, you can be like, okay, I've got a bunch of effects that maybe punish all players, but maybe more so some that just punish individual players, so you keep other players at a high enough life total that they are well susceptible to you swapping lives with them. Artifact for 6, pay 6, tap 2 target players, exchange life total. So literally just being able to be like, okay, yeah, you've got 30 life or so. I've been drawing a bunch of cards and losing a bunch of life with my commander, so I'm all the way down to 3 life, so let's swap, all right? See, a life swap can be great with a commander like this. And with that, this episode is coming to a close. Comment below with your thoughts on it. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.